died, he just led the new successor to be approved, Patriarch Sergius, and returned to the raping, with the only thriving part of the empire being Africa, where Heraclius and his siblings, plus his cousin, Nicetas, had grown into strong, virtuous, pious Romans. Growing into a skilled leader and general, Heraclius was engaged with a rich landowner's daughter, and was set for a comfortable life in his court. But that's not the path he would choose. As more and more letters from Priscus came detailing the horrors taking place in the east, Heraclius and his father just couldn't take it anymore. The crimes against Maurice and his family, the negligence over Romanist people, and the overwhelming threat of the Sassanids had to be avenged, ended, and destroyed for good. As appointed exarch by the last rightful Roman emperor, Maurice, a governorship derived from the old proconsular authority, Heraclius the Elder reminded all that him and his son, as effective consuls, were the last legitimate authorities left in the empire, thus falling to them to avenge the late emperor's life. In open rebellion against Phocas, Heraclius sent Nicetas to sail to Egypt, where with local support he took Alexandria and most of Egypt, cutting the grain supply to Phocas' regime. Instead of abdicating, or defending what was left of the Roman East, Phocas sent the entire Syrian army to go fight Heraclius' forces. For the crime of now wanting to be ruled by a cruel retard, Phocas' generals slaughtered an entire Egyptian city and attacked Alexandria twice, failing twice and retreating to Constantinople. With the empire crumbling, its major cities began falling into their own civil wars over which side to support. The blues and greens fought each other, the economy began collapsing, the plague continued to spread, and now the Slavs were invading the Balkans again. Among the many suffering were the Jews in the empire, having never quite recovered after what a certain sinful emperor did to them. Their long-suppressed frustrations, coupled with the blatant Satanism of Monophysites, proved prime targets for the Antichrist, who used his long-range dark spells to incite revolts and internal conflicts through them. The Monophysites and Jews thus began violently revolting against the local cities, killing many Orthodox Romans, and professing sympathies with the Sassanids. With Phocas leaving Syria completely defenseless, Sharvaras charged forward and raided nearby Antioch. Nicetas, seeing the mess over Syria-Palestina, he took it over before Sharvaras could. And now the moment to save the capital had arrived. After putting a depiction of its traditional protectress, the Virgin Mary, on his ship, Heraclius rallied the African legions under his command, plus some civilized Moorish allies, and sailed towards destiny. Sailing through the Mediterranean, Heraclius' fleet landed on the Bosphorus, getting welcomed and joined by the locals sick of Phocas' bullshit, getting attacked by the usurper's far larger fleet and defeating them anyway. Much like when Phocas revolted against Maurice, when Heraclius suddenly showed up near the capital, Phocas hadn't had enough time to man the Theodosian walls, leaving him defenseless. Monitoring the situation, Khosrau II couldn't allow the useful idiot to lose. So using the same Eastern satanic magic, he tried to get a hold of Priscus, but fighting it off, all it did was make him really sick, and unable to do anything during these events. With Heraclius' men entering Constantinople, Phocas demanded the leaderless executors to defend him and go kill Heraclius. Phocas was then tied up and carried to Heraclius' ship at the harbor, his regime now fallen. Standing above him, Heraclius then asked Phocas, "Is this how you rule the empire, scum?" And Phocas replied, "Will you rule it better?" Heraclius then chopped Phocas' cock and balls off for raping Phocas' wife, then his right arm for Commentiolus, his left arm for Constantina and her children, his right leg for Germanus, his left leg for Narses, and then his head for the rightful Emperor Maurice and the Roman people. Phocas' dismembered torso was then thrown to the plebs to incinerate, alongside Domitiolus and the others, who were lynched to death by the crowds, with Patriarch Sergius getting along very well with Heraclius. Having saved the empire from its worst emperor, Sergius acclaimed Heraclius as the rightful emperor, and married him to Fabia, now Empress Eudokia, getting the approval of both the Senate and the people of the Romans. And when the increasingly frail Heraclius the Elder got the news of his son's success, he finally allowed himself to die of happiness. Now in charge, Heraclius sent Nicidas to take charge in Syria and muster some troops there. However, the remaining army in Anatolia was led by that other Commentiolus, Phocas's brother, who then ordered his legions to march west and kill Heraclius, getting killed himself by his officers and replaced with the still recovering Priscus. Heraclius then told Khosrau II that Phocas had been killed, and so any pretext of vengeance was now void, but all he did was allow him to drop the act and just engage in a full-on war of conquest and destruction. While Priscus and Nicidas were still organizing Phocas's mess, Shahin invaded Anatolia again and took Caesarea, and Sharvaras got to Antioch before Nicidas and laid siege to it, and with the city already in anarchy and ruins, he took it with ease. Inside, Sharvaras destroyed as much as he could, massacring the Roman population and taking many as slaves to the east, where their souls would be devoured, all to ensure the great city would never recover. Nicidas then marched south to save it, but Sharvaras met him in battle, and both sides suffered catastrophic casualties. And even though he was forced to retreat, the cities could not be retaken. At the same time, Priscus had encircled Shahin in Caesarea during the winter, but due to Khosrau's powerful dark magic over him, Shahin broke his way out and returned to the east. Meanwhile, Heraclius was busy re-establishing the bureaucracy and showing his piety to God in many ways, among them having 2 children in 2 years, Epiphania and Heraclius Constantine. As he held dinners and meetings with Sergius, he was constantly approached by his niece, Maria's daughter, Martina, who deeply loved him, and he in turn openly ignored her and her sinful incestuous moves. After hearing of Priscus's failure, he could feel something was wrong, and recalled him to become his son's godfather during his baptism. And during the ceremony, Priscus finally succumbed to Khosrau, and began insulting Heraclius on the spot. Seeing he was bewitched, Heraclius struck him with a book, had him tonsured on the spot, and had him sent to a monastery to have the evil cleansed from his system. But Khosrau's curse was too strong, and Priscus died of old age before it could be done. And with his loss, Heraclius rescued Philippicus from his monastery exile to replace him. But Philippicus alone wouldn't suffice. The empire needed all generals it could get, and so, for the first time since Theodosius I, as the Eastern Emperor, Heraclius took it to lead his legions himself. Heraclius then took command of the Anatolian legions, sent Philippicus to distract Shahin, and ordered Nicidas to attack Sharvaras with him. Heraclius confronted Sharvaras first, and both sides again suffered massive casualties, with Sharvaras retreating to Antioch, and Nicidas having similar results himself. But in the north, as Shahin raided Anatolia, Philippicus countered this by raiding Sassanid Armenia, forcing him to hunt him down to stop it, losing many demons doing so in the mountainous terrain, something Heraclius took great notice of. However, due to the lack of any friendly forts in Syria and the pro-Sassanid agitation, Heraclius and Nicidas had to retreat to Anatolia and Egypt respectively. Sharvaras then seized the chance to take cities like Damascus and marched south, conquering all cities in his path with the help of the Monophysites and Jews. But his main objective was quite obvious. Of all cities in the Levant, Sharvaras headed straight for the birthplace of Christianity, Jerusalem. With his hordes and a sizable volunteer Jewish contingent, Sharvaras took the holy city and installed the bewitched Jews and Monophysites in power. And when the local Orthodox Romans dared resist the occupation, Sharvaras unleashed his full fury. He savagely slaughtered all Romans in the streets, targeting priests and nuns above all, destroyed most buildings in the city, and enslaved whatever few were unlucky enough to survive. After destroying all churches and killing 90,000 Romans, Sharvaras arrived at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the church built by Constantine and his mother Saint Helena over the tomb of Jesus Christ. Now at the heart of Christianity, the Sassanids' own variation of pagan satanic worship, Zoroastrianism, stepped forth to the stage. Zoroastrianism preached the existence of two fundamental deities and domains, God's order and Satan's chaos, and for the beloved chaos to triumph, the devils required that which had long since been kept safe within that sacred church. Losing his patience as he got closer to it, Sharvaras tortured and killed all priests and monks who refused to reveal where the location of the ancient relic was, until the weakest among them broke and told him at last. In their adoration of evil, the Zoroastrian assassins came to worship fire, destructive, chaotic fire, closer as they ever were now to the symbol of it all. The holiest church in the world was thus set ablaze, all remaining tortured survivors burning alive inside. But the true atrocity was what now laid at the hands of pagan barbarians coming, the true cross, Jesus Christ's cross, the half-of Saint Helena had left in Jerusalem, and along with him he brought the Patriarch of Jerusalem, who he enslaved alongside 37,000 Romans, sending them all with it to pacify. The destruction of Jerusalem and loss of half of the true cross so weakened Christianity that Khosrau's satanic magic grew to become nearly unstoppable. Wasting no time, Khosrau immediately attacked Eudokia, giving her such a strong epileptic attack she died immediately after. During his moment of weakness and sorrow, Heraclius was next in Khosrau's attack, and tried forcing him to renounce Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. But Heraclius, after a long struggle, refused to give in, and emerged from the attempt as pious as ever. However, to permanently fortify his soul against Eastern satanic magic, he had to permanently immunize himself with some lesser sin in its place, with the one at hand for the widower being incest. Patriarch Sergius quickly understood the dilemma and married the incestuous couple together, and even though it was better than Anastasius' curse, it would still have its costs. Indeed, for the cost of resisting the Antichrist being the premature death of all children the couple had together, except the first one, a death it was that, but great emperors rarely had time for self-pity. With Phocas having left the Balkans defenseless, the Slavs almost completely took over Illyria and most of Greece, trying again to take Thessalonica, failing again, instead resorting to building ships and raiding some major islands. But the Slavs were nothing but the Avars bitches at this point, and while they turned into Priscus' bitches recently, they had partially recovered, invading the empire and resuming control over the Slavs. And it was right then that the Visigoths invaded the remains of reconquered Hispania, never to be retaken. Though it didn't work out that well. While in Italy, the Lombards were still shit at sieging. There was a revolt in Ravenna.
I'll give it a try.
Venice, but it was shortly resolved. All of these crises in hand, but few things were as catastrophic as the empire's finances by then. With the whole being invaded from all sides simultaneously now, Heraclius thus cut many salaries in half, fully implemented Maurus's Diocletianic supply reform, and true to the times, minted new silver
My magic is at your disposal.
Deus habita Romanus. May God help the Romans. A sentiment proven
To battle
again
with pleasure.
Anatolia, but this time he ignored Philippus' counter-invasion of Armenia and just went to sack Ankara, Sardis, and Chalcedon again. Watching the fires from the distance, Heraclius ordered an embassy to go talk with Khosrau, but when they arrived, Khosrau imprisoned them, leaving them to die alone in the desert. For the Antichrist, negotiation was never an option. As
I live to
Khosrau, as
serve.
he continued his way south,
Very good.
Egypt
The honor is mine.
I am ready.
Monophysite support took city after city. In response, the Patriarch of Africa dragged all Monophysite priests in the city to sign an act of union to strengthen the resistance, but they just half-assed it. Nicetus took some reinforcements from Africa, but not having enough men to win a battle against Shravaras's horde, they resorted to garrisoning the cities, but they nevertheless surrendered one after the other to avoid destruction, and soon Alexandria itself was under siege. And they would have resisted were it not for a disgruntled, treacherous plague, who showed Shravaras an abandoned waterway
Moving
going
out.
straight into the city, which he used to infiltrate Alexandria and started killing indiscriminately. Nicetus fled before he could fall, but it didn't change the fact that the Sassanids now had completely taken over Egypt, placed an exclusively Monophysite leadership in power, and cut all grain shipments to the entire empire, which now had been reduced between a scrap of Thrace and the Taurus Mountains. With the fall of Egypt completely assured of victory, Khosrau sent a letter to Heraclius demanding his submission, calling him his vile slave, boasting of the many cities he destroyed and people he killed. But worst of all, he threatened to completely destroy Constantinople and dared mock Jesus Christ for being unable to escape crucifixion, saying Heraclius would equally fail to escape his fate. Word words couldn't describe the despair the Romans were in. The east had fallen to the Sassanids, the west to the Slavs and Avars, Italy and Spain to even more barbarians. Most legions were lost, the holy city had been destroyed by heathens, the grain from Egypt...
I've been waiting for this!
...the economy in shambles, not a single copper left in the treasury, and Khosrau preparing for a final assault at Constantinople. And at the face of certainty,
To victory!
Heraclius refused this fate and vowed that the Roman Empire would not fall.
Your orders?
With the resolve of ancient heroes, Heraclius raised taxes on everyone, took every loan rich patriots could give, put an end to the free food gives with the lack of Egyptian grain, and began recruiting every man available for a last-ditch effort to save the world. Heraclius was prepared to do anything to save the Roman Empire, even moving the capital to fucking Carthage of all places. The same care went for the Christian faith, proven when Sergius landed Heraclius the entire wealth of the church to support the war effort. With his blessing, Heraclius and Sergius began melting all gold and silver and copper goods
I
in
shall
the
try
church's
my
possession.
level best.
Candlesticks, ornaments, thrones, artworks, everything to get the wealth necessary for fighting the war. And eventually, they got it. The resources secured, Heraclius went to meditate in a temple across the Bosphorus, intent on devising the best plan to win the war. After listening to much advice, reading about the past campaigns of emperors like Trajan and the
Let us steal our defenses. We'll get 'em yet.
Heraclius came to realize what had to be done. After such enlightened desolation, Heraclius came up with the ultimate, most intricate and
I hope you're
thoughtful
watching,
revolutionary
Grandfather.
strategy to defeat the Sassanids for good. Ignore everything else, personally invade Persia, and fuck it raw. Immediately after, he called upon all
I can heal,
remaining
too.
legionaries in the empire to Anatolia and
That's
formed
the
a
stuff.
single army. His family he left for Sergius to protect, his capital to his Magister Militum, a general named Turnus to defend, leaving his wife,
It's time.
Nora, with her tagging along with him in his quest for vengeance. With the full support of the church and embarking on this monumental war against satanic heathens, Heraclius would well earn his reputation as the first crusader. Taking command of the tens of thousands of soldiers gathered together,
This is my way of doing things.
Strategically to the ladder and began the campaign with lots of training and even some mock battles.
Time to take action.
Was stripped from his men, one by one. He would have nothing but soldiers that lived up to being called Roman legionaries. Constantly, Heraclius gave speeches to his men, carrying a portrait of Jesus Christ, saying many times, "The Sassanids are
Let's do
fire-worshipping
this."
heathens who have destroyed our churches, and God willing, He will lead us to vengeance." But often, after these speeches, Heraclius would be found all alone. And when he was
I will
approached
end this.
against Rome, he would somebody remind him that this was the last Roman army left in the world. If they lost, everything.
Flames, heed my call!
Learning of Heraclius' presence, Sharvaras launched a direct invasion of Anatolia, with
falls to
Heraclius
me.
quickly outmaneuvering him into an advantageous Armenian terrain, with Sharvaras pursuing him. With his hordes approaching, Heraclius told his men to act like retards and threw banquet preparations on the battlefield to appear vulnerable. Sharvaras in turn
Another
noticed the ambush and tried to make one of his own, but it was discovered. Heraclius trained the legionnaires, then fell into position and beat the Sassanids in close combat, expelling Sharvaras from Anatolia with the first Roman victory in a decade. But instead of following that up, he then heard that the Avars planned to attack Constantinople, and to deal with their new Khan, he went there personally to strike a truce. The Khan agreed to a meeting at Heraclea, and as he prepared the festivities to meet with the Avar Khan, the Avars launched an ambush to kidnap him, but he was alerted in time, tore off his regalia and rode like a madman to Constantinople, with the frustrated Avars killing and enslaving
Victory
his
is
army.
within reach!
Raising their chance, the Avars agreed to being paid off from present trouble, and with the western front secured, Heraclius
It's
prepared
over.
to return to his
Sound
army.
strike.
You're wide
Resuming
open.
the campaign that would decide the empire's
I
fate.
love the battle.
Resuming command of his legions, Heraclius planned an audacious
I've been waiting
strike
for
at
this.
the heart of evil. First, retaking Theodosiopolis from Shahin, and then most of Armenia, destroying a local Sassanid sandcastle and directly invading Persia, heading straight to the cursed desert fortress of Gansak. Defending it was none other than Khosrau. But
Look
when
to my
Heraclius
shield!
arrived before the city, not only did his scouts beat the Sassanid scouts, but he managed to order an attack that killed many of Khosrau's bodyguards, making him flee before he could be captured, leading to the dispersal and destruction of his horde. Entering Ganzak, Heraclius confirmed why Khosrau ordered to defend it himself.
I see a
For it
path
housed
to
the
victory.
unholy Zoroastrian fire temple in his dark domains, the satanic pagan shrine of Adar Bushlasp. Entering this entropy-worshipping hellhole, Heraclius could feel the primordial evil.
Let us steel our defenses.
Watch me work.
Chaos is faster, manifesting the most atrocious thoughts, acts, and feelings mortal minds have ever endured. Channeling this evil,
This is bad.
Heraclius is discussed now being a demonic statue of Khosrau II, depicting him as an abhorrent deity that would one day rule the entire universe as its dark lord, but no more. The evil that sustained the Sassanid tyrants going with the complete destruction of the shrine, with Heraclius also destroying the
Just hold on,
birthplace of the
everyone!
demon Zarathustra to completely
Thank you.
avenge Jerusalem. Purposefully invading through the eastern mountains, Heraclius rendered the Sassanid numerical and cavalry advantage null and void, even more so after recruiting some
I'll take it
Christian
from here.
mercenaries from the Sassanid-dominated Caucasian lands. Incredible how well this works when you're immune from Eastern magic. Martina would keep giving birth to ill-fated projects.
We can do this.
But that wasn't the only.
This shall be a
Heraclius'
boon.
plans. Indescribably
Allow
furious,
me.
Khosrau ordered all horsemen to attack Heraclius at the same time, keeping only Razad back to protect himself. With Sharapakan advancing from northern Persia, Shahin from
Please, heed my call.
catching up in the west, Heraclius chose to face the closest one first. Another two sending some prisoners fed false information
falls to me.
Shahrazad about its location, buying him a lot of time. After evading him north to Lake Salem, Heraclius gave another great
cold
speech
wind
that
blows.
crushed Shrap of Razad, sending him fleeing away to the south. Only a couple of days later, Shahin arrived to link up with Sharapakan. Too late, that is, getting jumped on by the
So it
legions
comes to
and
battle.
getting utterly routed, fleeing away with his remaining horde. Heraclius then marched to Armenia, where his homesick Caucasian mercenaries left him, which Shahin saw as a chance to attack again, and carried decimated this time. Shahin and what remained of his horde linked up
I
with
will end
Shahrazad,
this.
who now found Heraclius' true location. Always maneuvering through the mountains, Shahrazad sent 6,000 Sassanids to block Heraclius' paths through them, camping nearby Leucon, which Heraclius'
What have we here?
scouts soon fought them off. And as Maurice put it in the Strategicon, the Sassanid camps are a chaotic, disorganized mess,
You won't
very
catch me.
vulnerable to night attacks. And so, as Shavaras bathed in the tears of tortured innocents nearby his chaos harem,
I'll take you on!
He heard that the Romans were suddenly attacking his camp. Caught completely by surprise, Shavaras ran away naked into the mountains, leaving his family, men, and chaos harem to be captured by the Romans. After thoroughly humiliating the Sassanids, Heraclius marched west to resupplying the empire. But after regrouping with his horde, Shavaras had all passages rivers blocked, destroying all bridges.
I see a path
Except
to victory.
one, a very obvious bait, but it would have to do. So when Heraclius' army neared that bridge and Shavaras ambushed them, Heraclius charged with his cavalry head-on, taking several arrows leading the charge, but never once having a bloody path to the
My
bridge.
knowledge
Getting
grows
so far
deeper.
ahead, his expeditors and Bucalari
I
had
have to do
kept up.
something.
At which the frustrated Shavaras commented to a captured Rome. Look at your emperor. He fears those arrows no more than Roman.
Strike while the iron's hot.
However, guarding the bridge was a freakishly huge Sassanid soldier, which, at his side, Heraclius cut down with a single strike, clearing the way out for his men. The legions then broke
Right on
through the
target.
dispersed Sassanids, making for the
Let me
bridge
show
and
you what I've
returning
learned.
to the empire, even recapturing Anuda and Martiopolis on the way. Shavaras would keep harassing them on the way, but it didn't stop Heraclius and his men from getting to Caesarea. The blow Heraclius had dealt the Sassanids was unfathomable. After beating all
Here I
armies
come.
and horsemen that were
Have
forming
another!
the way, and
Right
most
on
of all
target.
destroying Khosrau's main
So,
source of
it
satanic
falls to
power,
me.
it was now a matter of time of which side would fall first. Khosrau would then give most remaining hordes to
I see
Shavaras,
through you.
conjured a whole new horde from hell for Shahin with his waning
My
powers,
research
and sent
bears
a formal
fruit.
letter to the Avar Khan,
So it comes to
together
battle.
forming a plot to destroy Constantinople. When Heraclius was informed, as much as it pained him to say it, he could not afford
This is
to
my
retreat
way of
and
doing
turn
things.
closer to the Sassanids. To do so would be to lose the war. Constantinople would be left to defend itself. Sending some reinforcements to the city, now guarded by a few thousand legionnaires, they would all now rest on Sergius and Bonus to
You won't
defend.
escape.
Not really. It's Theodosian was a bust. Speaking of which, it was now being besieged in the south by Strats, now
Allow
ruling
me.
Chalcedon, and in the north by the Avar
I feel
Khan,
stronger
with tens
already.
of thousands of Avars, Slavs, Bulgars, Gepids, slaves, vassals, bitches, whatever. The Romans being outnumbered over 100 to 1. On the Avar front, they set up siege towers and catapults, resisting a Bucalari raid from the gates, and when asking Bonus to surrender the city, the Avar Khan received the proper Roman response. The siege started with the Avars throwing their Slavs and Bulgars at the walls, with the Sassanids sending ships with troops whenever the Romans were distracted, but the ships were sunk by the Roman navy, and the Slavs repelled from the first wall. Later, as they continually bombarded the walls, the Avars unleashed 12 siege towers to breach in, but they were carried by mules, and as Belisarius mathematically proved, dead mules don't carry. Despite these losses, the Avars just kept going and sent their full force on the first wall. But the thing about sieging the Theodosian walls was that, even if you managed to have some barbarians cross the moat and jump the first wall, they give that one. Of the few that would arrive on the other side alive, they would find a bigger, thicker wall before them, filled with archers shooting them down. And even if through some miracle a barbarian or another managed to cross beyond it, they would find an even bigger, thicker wall before them, with gigantic watchtowers and even more archers on them. Now do you see what Constantine and Anthemius were on about? At the face of repeated losses, the Avar Khan agreed to talk with some Roman diplomats, the trick being he was already talking with the Sassanids. In short, after calling Heraclius a coward of all things repeatedly, he told the Romans to all cowardly abandon Constantinople and cross to Chalcedon across the sea, where he assured, pinky promise that Strats definitely wouldn't just kill all of them on the spot and devour the corpses. Further adding that, you cannot escape neither the Avars nor the Sassanids, lest you soar into the air like birds or dive into the waves like fish. Or keep killing barbarians like Romans. For no amount of Avar threats could face the morale Patriarch Sergius had built up among the troops. Why, with him parading a depiction of the Virgin Mary on the walls 24/7 and going on repeated theological rants against the pagan barbarians. And indeed, every so often at night, when the Avar Khan and his soldiers would look at the Theodosian walls, they would see a strange woman all by herself and get deeply disturbed. To finally breach the city, the Avar Khan coordinated with Strats to use the Slavs' boats to ferry the Sassanids to the weaker harbor walls and enter the city while they were distracted with another massive frontal assault. But Bonus caught some of the Sassanid envoys on their way back, learning everything about the plan, including that the Slavs would be waiting for fire signals of where to land. So Bonus then lit up some fires near the Golden Horn, let the Slavs land, and killed all of them. Out of spite, if anything, the Avar Khan just kept ordering suicidal attacks at the walls. But after such massive casualties began piling up, seeing Slavs and Bulgars die by the scores just kinda lost its fun. And finally he ordered a full retreat. As they walked away from the city, Theodore approached the Khan to officialize their defeat and ensure peace. But the Avar Khan had none of it, and assured Theodore that he would return. He never returned. Same for Strats, who lifted his own side of the siege and retreated east, proving once again the genius of Saint Constantine. Awaiting updates from the west, once he heard the siege was repelled, Heraclius thanked the Virgin Mary, put Theodore in charge of the army, and took a small detachment with him to the Caucasus, and started the end of the war. Leaving for the Caucasus in his special mission, Shahin saw the chance to attack the legions while he was away, and, to put it mildly, he got annihilated by Theodore. The complete and utter slaughter of his 50,000 strong Sassanid horde so humiliated Shahin that he either killed himself or died of depression, unable as he was to face the wrath of Christmas. As for Heraclius' northern venture, it was to contact the Khazars, now raiding the distracted Sassanids. To get the barbarian chief to serve Rome, beyond the obvious Christian magic, Heraclius also gave the Khan several expensive gifts, gave him a free pass to lead Persia into oblivion, and promised his daughter Epiphania's hand in marriage, resulting in him pledging his hordes to the emperor. Now united on the battlefield, Heraclius' first target was to liberate the Christian Caucasus from Sassanid's tyranny by taking Tbilisi.
I'll give it a try.
Khosrow sent
At your service.
Khan with reinforcements to defend it. Defend it against Traction trebuchets, that is. He failed. to no one's shock. And though the Khan's life would be lost in the siege, the Khazars eventually breached in and beat Sharapakan. And just like that, the tides of war had shifted. To Heraclius that was all too clear, which is why he had left the Khazars to finish the siege, taking some of them with his legion south, crushing a local Sassanid horde, and invading Mesopotamia yet again. Meanwhile, suffering from his ever weaker state, Khosrau grew ever madder and crueler, dead set on perpetual war. When he heard of Shahin's defeat and death, he ordered his body transported back to Tasiphon, where he whipped it himself into unrecognizability for his failure. And when Sharapakan was defeated, he got even madder, so mad that when he learned of Shavaras's failure to destroy Constantinople, he sent a letter ordering for his officers to kill him, which the Romans intercepted on the way, and gave it to Shavaras instead. And due to Khosrau's ever weaker grasp on his minions, the
If I need your
indignation made
approval.
Shavaras play for his command and act on his own accord. Telling his horde Khosrau also wished to execute hundreds of officers as well, they revolted against him under Shavaras, depriving Khosrau of his best general. Revolt meaning he marched to Antioch and refused to follow Khosrau's orders anymore. And now, despite 3 decades of war, so many years of fierce campaign, and the advent of winter, even with most of the Khazars leaving for their homeland, Heraclius and the last 25,000 legionnaires in the world
I'm way too tired.